As the ride-or-die wife of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Rasheeda Frost has long been hailed as the woman who stood tall amid betrayal, heartbreak, and headline-making scandals involving her husband, Kirk Frost. Over the years, fans have watched in disbelief as Rasheeda publicly forgave Kirk for everything from extramarital affairs to an alleged infidelity. Now, at 48, she is finally breaking her silence about Kirk's affairs. And trust me, it's not what you think. In a recent interview that went viral, Rasheeda finally revealed her true thoughts about the past, the truth behind the rumors, and the reasons behind her prolonged silence. Her revelations are more shocking and raw than anyone could have imagined. In today's video, we're delving deeply into Rasheeda's stunning revelations, what actually transpired behind the scenes of Kirk's infidelity, how Rasheeda truly felt when the cheating and baby mama drama played out on TV, and why she is speaking. Out now when Love and Hip Hop Atlanta first aired in 2012. Rasheeda and Kirk were already fan favorites, known for their hustle, family values, and what appeared to be a solid marriage. However, just one season later, that carefully constructed image started to crack, and it cracked hard. We have interview footage, timeline breakdowns, and verified details that finally paint the full picture. You don't want to miss a second of this emotional unraveling of one of reality TV's most dramatic marriages. Questioned the paternity of Rasheeda's pregnancy. And the moment Kirk looked his wife in the eyes and implied that the baby might not even be his, became one of the most explosive and uncomfortable scenes in reality TV history. The cameras captured every moment behind the scenes, and Rasheeda later acknowledged that she was taken by surprise when she first learned she was pregnant, and that, rather than receiving love and support, she received suspicion on national television. Viewers were astonished. Was it a staged stunt to increase ratings? Or was the beginning of the breakdown of a very real marriage? Most fans were unaware at the time that, according to Rasheeda's recent revelation, his suspicions weren't limited to TV dramas. He had already been acting distant, asking her whereabouts, becoming paranoid, and accusing her of things that, in retrospect, seemed more like projection than genuine concern. This wasn't just a reality show plot. It was the beginning of a severe public humiliation that, in her own words from a recent podcast appearance, I was pregnant and emotional. And suddenly, I was fighting for my reputation on camera. I didn't sign up for this. I was fighting for my baby and my dignity. If Season 2 sowed the seeds of doubt, then Season 3 poured gasoline on the fire. Let's go back to one of the most notorious moments in Love and Hip Hop Atlanta history, the cabin trip. Wasn't just a plot point. It was the time when Kirk Frost went from being a dubious husband to a full-blown scandal headline during a boys' trip to a secluded cabin in the woods. A trip that was supposedly supposed to settle the emotional fallout. This trip would lead to explosive rumors of Kirk cheating again. This time, not just emotionally, but physically. Rumors circulated that Kirk had slept with a woman named Jasmine Washington. And shortly after, Jasmine came forward declaring she was pregnant with Kirk's child. Yes, while Rasheeda was still reeling from his on-camera betrayal in the previous season. Kirk was caught on camera partying with multiple women, drinking heavily, and eventually getting with one woman in particular. A public scandal involving another woman and a child, and this time it was unavoidable. There were receipts, screenshots of timelines, and later a baby boy named Cannon, who she claimed was Kirk's son. At first, Kirk denied it, saying the timeline didn't add up and that Jasmine was clout-chasing Rasheeda again, leaving her in the middle. Now, here's where Rasheeda's recent confession hits hard. In an intimate sit-down she did on a podcast earlier this year, Rasheeda acknowledged that she already suspected Kirk was cheating at the time. But what truly crushed her mood was how humiliating and public the whole situation became. She continued, the cameras showed her trying to stay strong, holding down her kids and managing her business. But they didn't show the emotional toll it took on her mental health. She couldn't sleep. She lost weight, and most of all, she felt betrayed not just by Kirk, but by the world for turning her pain into entertainment. Fans begged her to leave, and friends called her out. But Rasheeda stayed because she wanted to protect her family. To even have time to cry before the headlines started rolling in, she claimed. While the world was preoccupied with the baby scandal and Kirk's public mésalliances, Rasheeda was dealing with something much deeper behind closed doors that never made it onto the reality show. In her recent interview, she finally shared it all, revealing that the most painful betrayal wasn't just Kirk's cheating or the baby, but rather the emotional abandonment that followed. She also confided that she was afraid of starting over, and Kirk eventually took a DNA test, and the results confirmed what Jasmine had claimed all along. He was the father. Rasheeda claimed that Kirk became completely checked out, barely spoke to her unless the cameras were present, stopped apologizing, stopped trying, and, worst of all, made her feel like the villain, as if she was overreacting and should just move on for the sake of appearances. Everyone saw the broken pieces of their marriage and herself, as well as the infidelity, she said. But they didn't see how cold he became afterward, the emotional distance, the silence, and the way I felt invisible. In my own home, love her could be so uncaring. She claimed that she would look at their wedding pictures and wonder, was any of it real? Her trust was destroyed, and the man she once relied on became a stranger. At the same time, Rasheeda was juggling running several businesses, raising her children, and maintaining her public persona. And she was emotionally and physically exhausted. She acknowledged that she was depressed and even doubting her own value. But the thing that really drove her over the edge was when she discovered a second phone that Kirk had concealed a phone she had never known existed on that phone. She received texts with this phone, changed everything when I told him, I'm done. I wasn't going to keep bleeding for a man who kept cutting me. And the fact that he could do all that, knowing I had stayed through the worst of it, was the last straw. However, the crazy part is that Rasheeda didn't leave. Instead, she moved into a different room, stopped speaking to him outside of business and co-parenting, and concentrated on quietly rebuilding herself from the inside out. That during this time she did something she hadn't done in years. She began going to therapy alone. She didn't care if Kirk followed her. This was about her healing, not theirs. Rasheeda claimed that therapy changed everything, giving her the strength to set boundaries with Kirk and with herself after years of emotional walls and silence. She also claimed to have finally understood the emotional manipulation she had endured, and the pressure to be the strong wife at all costs. Something that shocked her, and not in the way you might expect. In a moment she described as eerily calm but deeply unsettling, Kirk sat her down and confessed why he did it all. According to Rasheeda, Kirk told her that he never believed in monogamy the way she did, and that for years he had been struggling with the idea of being a husband in the traditional sense. He acknowledged that even while they were building their empire, having children, and showing up for filming, he had been secretly battling resentment, not toward Rasheeda, but toward the role he felt forced to play. He told me, I didn't know how to be a one-woman man because I never saw that growing up. I thought loyalty was providing, not being faithful. When Rasheeda heard his truth, that he never really felt aligned with monogamy, it broke everything she had been fighting for. She realized that while she was trying to change their marriage, they weren't even following the same rules. And worse, Kirk. For years, she had blamed herself for making him feel emasculated by being more successful. Confessed to having several affairs in the early years of their marriage, where Rasheeda was unaware of and probably would not have discovered unless he had come clean. Rasheeda told interviewers that she sat there listening, unable to cry. Not because she wasn't hurt, but because the pain had become numb. It was like hearing someone read the last chapter of a book. But she stayed seated and didn't yell or yell out loud. Kirk reportedly broke down in tears when she asked him a question that completely altered the dynamic of their relationship. Are you telling me because you're ready to fight for me for real? Or because you're ready to lose me? He acknowledged that he had always feared Rasheeda would leave him. And instead of rising to her standards, he self-sabotaged because he didn't feel worthy of the version of love she gave him. and he constantly rejected it before it could destroy him. It was a twisted form of insecurity. But for Rasheeda, it was also a moment option that it wasn't just about infidelity, about emotional immaturity, generational trauma, and a deep-seated fear of vulnerability. The kind of fear Kirk had never addressed until it was almost too late. But the most shocking part was when Rasheeda revealed that, despite everything, she had been in love with a false version of Kirk called "I wasn't in love with the man in front of me, but rather I was in love with the potential of who I wanted him to be." The emotional wreckage had already been exposed, including cheating lies, a secret child, emotional abandonment, and a painful confession that stunned Rasheeda. Rasheeda says she had been praying, journaling, and genuinely trying to figure out what her next step should be. She wasn't ready to call it quits, but she also couldn't ignore the gut feeling that something was still off. Her therapist had advised her to trust the silence, and that advice turned out to be eerily prophetic that week. Rasheeda stumbled upon a message that she wasn't supposed to see, but it came through one of their shared businesses. Counts where Kirk had unintentionally synced a device. And the message was from a completely different woman, not Jasmine. Not someone they had dealt with publicly, but someone completely new. And the tone wasn't flirtatious. Rather, it was intimate. The woman thanked Kirk for supporting her emotionally and mentioned their recent dinner. It was obvious from the context that it wasn't just business or a one-time lapse, but rather an emotional affair. And for Rasheeda, that was the final straw. Rasheeda later commented, "He just needed to keep seeking connection outside of what we built, and that was enough." She confronted him, calmly, no yelling, no throwing things, no dramatic stormouts. She just asked him, "Are you still looking for something you haven't found in me after all these years?" Kirk surprised Rasheeda by claiming that the relationship was platonic and that it was a safe place for him to vent. He also insisted that nothing physical had happened, but to Rasheeda, the fact that he still needed someone else to process his emotions and that he still needed to hide parts of himself, told her everything she needed to know that this wasn't about infidelity anymore. Rasheeda took a break for the first time in their long, tumultuous relationship. It wasn't the reality TV break we often hear about, but a real one. She moved out of the marital bedroom and into her own private space, focusing only on herself and their kids. She also set strict boundaries, saying that if Kirk wanted to rebuild what they had, it wouldn't be through gifts, apologies, or TV redemption arcs. Intentional actions, no more half-hearted attempts, no more charm followed by chaos. And Kirk shockingly agreed in a rare quiet shift. He started seeing a therapist on his own, stepped back from the spotlight, and for the first time in years, he stopped trying to fix things with money and actually started listening. However, Rasheeda made it clear that therapy was not a ticket back into her heart. Rather, it was a requirement for them to even begin coexisting as partners again, and only if she saw lasting change. She called this time the most empowering season of her life, not because it was simple, but because it was honest. She even took a break from filming some of the love and hip-hop scenes to concentrate on her business empire, which includes a press boutique and private workshops for mentoring young women. She started sharing bits of her healing journey, not the drama, but the growth, and her fans responded with overwhelming support. So, where are things now? Rasheeda says she and Kirk are rebuilding but not rushing. They co-parent peacefully, collaborate as business partners, and figure out what it means to be two people who have deeply hurt each other, still seek significance in their past. "I don't know what the future looks like," she recently posted, "but I know this. I'm not the same woman who tolerated lies and silence. I'm not afraid to walk away if my peace is threatened, and if we make it, it'll be because we both chose to do the real work and not just pretend for the cameras."